Good to go.
All right. So this is our technical session on hardware and network troubleshooting. This is a big portion of the 1002. There are a lot of troubleshooting questions.
And 1001 for
and
networking
1001,
hardware.
But there will be some in the 1001, but there is a lot more in the 1002. But you know, with all technology that we're learning, we want to be able to understand how they work, so that way we can use them effectively, but also so that way we can repair them effectively. So let's get into it. Our objectives for today, Jerusalem, will you read these two for me? You are muted. You're still muted.
Sorry about that. Okay. Objectives: identify common hardware and network issues that users experience. Describe how to resolve those common issues.
Perfect. Thank you. Kelly, we all need someone in our lives to fact check this as we go. Keep us.
Yeah, I do that enough to her, so, you know, it's fair.
Right. So, give you a little precursor. This is a very text-heavy session. So there's a lot of reading in this. And so my suggestion to you is to try to take these concepts in stride and come back to them every so often as you continue your studies going forward. But I'm exhausted just looking at these two paragraphs, so I'm going to make Hunter read them.
Computers are complicated, and troubleshooting can be hard. You already know that, but give yourself some latitude in troubleshooting, because it's not always easy. Prepare yourself with a solid foundation of knowledge and never be afraid to consult other resources, such as the internet or other coworkers. Situations will arise that make even the most experienced technicians shake their heads in frustration. Sometimes you'll hear people say things like, it just takes practice and experience to become good at troubleshooting. Those words are of little comfort to someone who is relatively new and facing a challenging problem. Yes, experience does help, but even newer technicians can be effective troubleshooters if they understand the fundamentals and how to follow a logical process.
Perfect. So, when you are attempting to troubleshoot, do not, in real life, do not be afraid to use Google and your coworkers. On the A+, you got to use your own HUD, so can't be Googling during that. But in real life, make use of your resources. Yeah. If you're able to get away with it, who am I to say?
Sorry.
You're good, Hunter. So don't be afraid. And even when, studying and practicing for this, don't be afraid to, if you don't know or understand a concept, Google it, look it up, figure it out for yourself, because going through that process will help you remember it the next time. All right, so some categories of common issues that we might face, and the four that we'll be discussing today are storage, video systems, so that could be projectors or displays, printers, and then wired and wireless networks. All right, so hard drives, let's talk about them. Karen, will you read up to this point?
Hard disk system problems usually stem from one of the following three causes: the adapter, the SATA, PATA, or other interface is bad. The disk is bad or failing. The adapter and the disk are connected incorrectly.
Perfect. So, hard drives aren't super difficult to diagnose. With our adapters and disk being connected incorrectly, that's typically going to happen when you are first installing them into your system. So that's something you will discover pretty quickly. It's also possible that when you've moved the system, that the connections could be knocked out of place or just disconnected enough where it won't work with your hard drive. So when diagnosing this portion of the hard drive, think to yourself, okay, did I just install the hard drive, or did I just move the hard drive, or move the system? The disk is bad or failing, you will most likely hear this happening. If it is failing, there should be a lot of noise coming from your hard drive, having to read and write a bunch, and also it'll kind of sound broken.
And when you hear that screeching noise come from your hard drive, I guarantee you will never forget it.
Yes. Maybe we can find a YouTube video or something as an example. But yeah, it is very noticeable.
Yes. And if all your precious data is on there, it is a very terrifying sound.
Yes. Yep. So that's why we always recommend having backups, so that way we can replace hard drives, because they're not difficult to replace, especially if you have the data backed up. Your adapter's going bad. That could happen, but it's not super likely. It's probably more likely that it'll die on you first.
But the improper connection actually is a good one to verify.
Yeah, making sure it's more likely that the connector itself is going to be okay, and that the connection to the drive is what's going to be bad. And so just making sure you seat it properly will be very beneficial. Lorraine, will you read the last two paragraphs?
The first and last causes are easy to identify because in either case, the symptom will be obvious. The drive won't work. You won't be able to get the computer to communicate with the disk drive. The way to see which component is at fault is to disconnect and reconnect, or to try the device in another system, or try another drive in the affected system. However, if the problem is a bad or failing disk drive, the symptoms aren't always as obvious.
Perfect, thank you. Great. So, some symptoms that you might see. Let's have Vincent, will you read the first one for us? First paragraph.
Loud clicking or scratching noises. You will only hear these coming from mechanical drives, and they are usually caused by physical malfunction within the drive itself. It's time to grab a screwdriver and replace the hard drive.
Perfect. So this one is very easy to notice because it will be loud, and you're going to hear it. If you hear anything unusual coming from your desktop, you know that's a sign that you need to be moving something or replacing something. Let's see. Glean, will you read the second paragraph for us?
Slow performance or read-write failures. The failing hard drive might exhibit these symptoms. It can also be a symptom of the hard drive being too full. The solution here is to remove files or old applications to free up space and look at defragmenting the hard drive.
Yes, perfect. So anytime you have slow performance and read-write failures, you need to think to yourself, I need to either get more space or free up space. And so freeing up space can be as simple as removing old applications and files that you don't need anymore, and defragmenting the hard drive, which there is a lab for that. Recommend doing it. I'm sure I don't know if you guys have gotten to it yet, but it's a good one to go through. All right, Rachel, will you take our last paragraph?
Boot problems. This could be any of a number of problems, such as a complete failure to boot, a hard drive not being recognized by the BIOS, or the OS not being found. Do your due diligence and reseat your connections and make sure that the BIOS recognizes the drive before replacing it. A system that boots fine but can't find the OS could indicate a problem with the master boot record or boot sector on the hard drive. To fix this in any current version of Windows, boot to bootable media, optical disk, or USB, and enter the Windows recovery environment. In WinRe, you can get to a command prompt and use boot rec/fix MBR to fix the master boot record, and boot rec/fix boot to fix the boot sector.
Perfect, thank you. So let's see if I can find it. So I have 1, 2, 3 flash drives that I just keep handy for operating systems that I work with. I have a Linux flash drive, I have a Windows flash drive. Kelly has a resource where you can put all the different operating systems on one single drive, but I've been too lazy to format that myself, so I just have multiple flash drives. And so I recommend having one of these in your toolkit, just if you need to go and fix an operating system not being found, being able to boot in that Windows recovery environment is a lot easier if you already have that drive pre-made. All right, so now we'll talk about SMART. Jessica, will you read our big chunky paragraph?
Sure. SMART, self-monitoring, analysis and reporting technology, software installed on them. SMART monitors hard drive reliability and theoretically can warn you in the event of an imminent failure. The idea behind SMART is great. Who wouldn't want to know when their hard drive was going to fail so they could back up the drive? In practice, though, it seems to help manufacturers locate persistent issues by identifying hard drive design flaws more than it helps end users avoid catastrophic data losses. Helping hard drive manufacturers do a better job isn't a bad thing, but SMART hasn't enjoyed widespread commercial success with end users.
Perfect. So SMART is something that you can turn on. I believe it's automatically turned on for in most scenarios with newer devices, but most of the time it's it's not overly reliable as a, hey, your hard drive's about to die, replace it now. But it might actually warn you in time, so that way you know that you should in fact back up your hard drive and get a new one. If you see a SMART notification, immediately stop what you're doing, make a backup, get a new hard drive. It will die soon.
Do not ignore it.
Yeah, do not ignore this. It's, you know, if you're lucky, well, I say lucky in the sense that it's able to warn you, take the warning, back up your stuff. Right, RAID arrays. Had to come back to it at some point. All right, Leela, will you read the first paragraph?
If you are using a redundant array of independent or inexpensive disk RAID system, you have additional challenges to deal with. First, you have more disks, so the chance of having a single failure increases. Second, you more than likely have one or more additional hard disk controllers. So again, you introduce more parts than can fail. Third, there will likely be a software component that manages the RAID array.
Perfect. So RAID, as always, makes things a little bit more complicated. But if you're able to fix hard drive issues, you'll be able to maneuver through your RAID arrays pretty easily. So Cynthia, will you read the second paragraph?
If your RAID array isn't found or stops working, try to narrow down the issue. Is it one disk that failed, or is the whole system down, indicating a problem with the controller or the software, along with external enclosures, which require a separate connection to the computer? Most external RAID systems have status indicators and troubleshooting utilities to help you identify problems.
Perfect. So if you have these troubleshooting utilities, make use of them. They'll help you figure out what the problem actually is, or at least where to start looking in order to fix your problem. And, you know, because when troubleshooting, the goal is to narrow down what the problem actually is. And so we just kind of systematically do that. And making use of troubleshooting utilities is a great way to get started with that. Safao, would you read the last paragraph?
Disk tripping. You actually have more points of failure than a single device, meaning that you're at the great risk of failure versus using just one hard drive. One drive failure will cause the entire set to fail.
Perfect. So we already knew this with our understanding of RAID. In that session, we know that RAID 0, which is used for striping, where we portion out the data equally to our two drives. And if you have an issue with one of the drives, you pretty much lose all of your data. So we should already understand that point. All right, RAID arrays continued. RAID 1, disk mirroring. Let's see. Dermis, would you take that first paragraph for us? Oh, I think you're muted on some end. Dermis, I think you're muted on some mic. I think I'm barely hearing you. I think your mic isn't picking up very well, Dermis. I think I'm getting a little bit of pickup, but not much. But that's okay. We appreciate the spirit you brought into your words. I could tell you were really into it. So we'll have Steven do raid 1 and 5 because I was going to have him do 5.
Raid 1 disk mirroring increases your fault tolerance. If one drive fails, the other has an extra replica of the data. You'll need to replace the failed drive, but unless both drives unexpectedly fail, you shouldn't lose any data. Raid 5, disk striping with parity. A single drive failure usually means that your data will be fine. Provided you replace the failed drive, if 2 or more drives fail, the RAID 5 array will be lost, and you will need to fix the array and then restore the data from backup.
Perfect. So with RAID 1 and 5, if a drive goes bad, replace it, and you'll be able to recover your data. So if you know that any of your drives go bad, just go ahead and replace it. Save yourself the headache, because if you lose if you lose 2, then you're done. So you might as well just go ahead and replace. RAID 10. Susan.
RAID 10 1+0 is a mirrored stripe set. As long as one drive is in each mirrored pair is functional, just like in RAID 1, you shouldn't lose any data.
Perfect. So RAID 10 is pretty secure. So once again, if you lose a drive, go ahead and replace it. So that way you can get it resynced and your RAID array will be a lot more solid. Whew. Optical drives. All right, I'm going to read some just to lessen the load for all of you. Optical drives, CD-ROM, DVD, and Blu-ray problems are normally media related. Although compact disc technology is pretty reliable, it is not perfect. One factor to consider is the cleanliness of the disc. On many occasions, if a disc is unreadable, cleaning it with an approved cleaner and lint-free cleaning towel will fix the problem. Many of us that rented DVDs or video games from the Blockbuster, Family Video, wherever, you know that people don't always take care of their DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever, and it gets scratches on them. So you blow on it, you go, and then you wipe it on your shirt, and sometimes that fixes it. We shouldn't really do that.
Yeah, I was about to say, don't ever do that.
Don't do that. But I know for a fact that we've all done that. I have done that many times, and probably made things worse. You want to make sure that you're using an approved cleaner and a lint-free cleaning towel when attempting to wipe it. Yes, Jessica.
Where did we all even get that tactic from to, like, who invented that? I'm just like, who started that?
I learned it from a friend and it worked once, so I assumed it would always fix the problem.
All right, we'll raise a hand. Who had an original Nintendo and actually folded up a piece of paper to jam it in there a little bit further so that it would actually play the game, These tactics are tried and true. They somehow get spread, from one person to another. Like the original Atari games and the Nintendo games, you pull them out and they had the little thing you have to
yep,
to try to blow all the dust out of it. And, CDs, it was and then, you made sure to use the underside of your shirt because it was softer, not the top.
That was my favorite move right there, Kelly. My siblings will always come find me because they knew I took such pride in bringing their game back to life. So I would blow. They would be like, blow, baby, blow. And I was like, give it to me. The little joys in life when you're a kiddo.
Exactly. But it's amazing how all the same techniques seem to spring up all over the place at the same time. And this was pre-internet forums, people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't like we went online and looked it up. This was before that.
Venkata.
Yeah, but what, even after cleaning the CD with a genuine cleaner, and what if it doesn't work?
If that doesn't work, most likely you have a bad CD and you're gonna have to get a new one.
I can't do that. It's my marriage.
Oh no.
No, okay. They have ones that actually like they're like it has a fine sandpaper that will actually grind it and smooth it out. They have machines that'll do it. I'll find one for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't recommend you taking sandpaper to your.
No.
Your
this is an actual tool. This is an actual tool.
I just want to clarify that we are sending Venkata to a professional to take care of this.
Yes, it is a device you can use that is specifically meant for this, that smooths out the edges on the CD so that it can be played.
Yes. I would recommend taking it to a professional because of the data that is on the disk. I don't recommend attempting to fix it yourself, just because we want it to have the highest chance of recovery. So we'll find you a good resource.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We changed so many DVD players recently. The old one, and it didn't play it. So we tried it in our computer. It didn't work. So what to do to work it? So that's what we were thinking.
Gotcha. For everything else though, if it's, just a movie that you really like, I recommend purchasing a new copy of the movie. And when I'm not recorded, we can talk about sailing the high seas. But that's a conversation for a different day. I call on Karen to take our middle paragraph.
The one out the optical drive?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If the operating system doesn't see the drive, start troubleshooting by determining whether the drive is receiving power. If the tray will eject, you can assume that the drive has power. Next, check the BIOS setup, SATA or PATA drives to make sure that the drive has been detected. If not, check the master-slave jumper on the drive and make sure that the PATA adapter is set to auto. CD-ROM or ATAPI in BIOS setup. Once inside the case, ensure that both the drives and the motherboard ends are securely connected. And on a PATA drive, that the ribbon cable is properly aligned with pin 1, the edge that has the red or pink stripe being closest to the power connector. Ooh, that was a lot.
You did great. I appreciate it. So first thing, when you're trying to see what the issue is with one of these optical drives, if it will open, you know that you at least have power to it. So most likely it's going to be on your SATA or PATA side of things, because that's where the data is transferred. So if you've moved it recently, or if it's your first time installing, I would go in and check to make sure you actually connected it properly before. Yeah, I'd honestly go and check to make sure that you connected it properly, because that's most likely what the issue is. But then you can also go into the motherboard settings. Nowadays, this isn't something we really have to diagnose, most most desktops and even laptops are kind of walking away from the optical drives, and they're being sold as attachments. So you would buy one that connects through a USB port, but it is possible that you'll see one in the wild. So it's a good idea to have. Motherboard settings, meaning BIOS, yes. Right, and if an optical drive works normally but doesn't perform its special capability, so if it doesn't burn disk, the problem is likely a software issue. So you could look at updating some drivers. Right, video issues. Let's give this one to Aster.
Troubleshooting video. Problem is, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's usually fairly straightforward because there are a limited number of issues that you might face. You can sum up nearly all video problems with two simple statements. There is either no video or bad video. Either the video card or the monitor, projector, display is to blame. In the vast majority of cases, when you have a video problem on a desktop computer, a good troubleshooting step is to check the monitor by transferring the video to another machine that you know is working. See if it works there. If the problem persists, you know it's the monitor. If it goes away, you know it's the video card or possibly the driver. Is the video card seated properly? Is the newest driver installed?
Perfect, thank you. So video issues are relatively easy to diagnose. You're either going to have no video or it's going to look bad. And so typically it's going to be your monitor, your cable, or the port. And so, you know, you want to try, honestly, unplugging the cable and replugging it back in. A lot of times that fixes it. So I would try that first, then check to see, you know, if you're plugging if it's your first time plugging the monitor in, making sure that you've plugged it into the right port. So that could be both on the desktop side and the monitor side. If you have a graphics card, make sure that you are connecting the cable to the graphics card port, not the motherboard's port. The very first mistake I made as a little computer builder when I was younger, I built my desktop, everything was fine, and then I plugged the monitor into the motherboard HDMI port instead of the graphics card HDMI port. And so the graphics card wasn't processing the graphics through its port. The motherboard was taking care of all the visuals, which is not what you want. So make sure you plug it into the right port. If you have multiple HDMI ports on your monitor, you might have to change the what's the word I'm looking for, guys? Yeah, when input, the input number. You got to get the remote, hit input, and it changes HDMI 1, HDMI 2, TV. I'm sure there are other ones. Game, I think, shows up sometimes. So make sure that you have it displaying the right input.
Yeah, it's the menu options key on the monitor. You have it on your televisions pretty much. It works the same way.
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing. So, yeah, Video issues, relatively easy to diagnose and work through. I just prompt you when the drivers, no, the computer will not always tell you that you need to update your drivers. Sometimes you will have to do that yourself. What about the screen cases? What do you mean, Tisdale? You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Probably that's because the error could be the screen case cannot be that one.
Do you mean like on a phone or like the
on the monitor, the TV, or anyone too?
So the screen, the casing around the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could also be an issue, like where you know the monitor itself has gone bad, and so you might have to go in and you could replace certain parts, or you know sometimes it's easier to just get a new monitor depending on the issue and the monitor that you have. Check every driver installed. Julian, I'm not sure, to be. Kelly.
What's up?
Is there a place that shows you all of the drivers that you have installed in one spot?
Device manager.
Okay. Device manager.
That's where you would manage all your drivers?
Yep. All right. Video issues number 2. Hunter, no image on the screen.
Troubleshooting this one on desktops is usually pretty easy. Try another monitor or try this monitor on another computer. That will narrow it down quickly. Remember, if it's not the monitor, it's probably the video card. If it's a laptop with no image on the screen, there are a few things to try. First, make sure the system is getting power. The power light should be on. If so, try using the function key or FN key to toggle the display. If that doesn't work, reboot the system. Does the BIOS screen show? If not, then it's a problem with the display unit. If it does, but the screen goes blank before or during the Windows splash screen, then it's a Windows issue. Try to boot into VGA mode and then reset the resolution or reinstall the video driver. If none of that works, replace the display unit.
Perfect. So, with this, I also recommend, like if it's a laptop, use Google and see if other people are having the same issues with your with that brand of laptop, because it could be something very simple as you know, this single part consistently goes bad. You should check here, or you just need to do a hard reset and that would fix it. DW, yes.
I've actually ran into that, and sometimes there's a faulty cable. Mm-hmm. So sometimes your cable could have broken, and it's causing you know, the signal not to travel from wherever it could be your gaming system or your computer to your display device. So yep. You also check your cables. Mm-hmm. I didn't see it listed there, which I find weird.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I was thinking no image on the screen, I was thinking that it was just not turning on. But yeah, no, that is a good point. It could very well just be a bad cable. And if you have, you know, more than one display in your home, if you have, you know, 2 devices that use 2 different HDMI cables, just try swapping the HDMI cable with the one that you know works. And if that fixes it, you know you just have a bad cable. So that's a good point. All right. Monitor that keeps shutting down. Monitors have their own internal power supply and they can overheat. Overheating was more common with CRT displays than LCDs, but it can still happen. So make sure that the air vents on the back of your monitor are dust and debris free. If the problem persists, it's best to replace the monitor. So just make sure that, you know, you periodically you clean your workstation from dust and debris every few weeks. And I probably should do it even more than that because I have a dog. I clean out the little vents in my desktop to remove the dog hair and the dust that he tracks in the house. Same with my monitors. I just go in and just kind of dust the back of it to try to clear off the vents. That just helps keep everything a little bit cooler. Oof. All right. Dead pixels or artifacts. Will you read that paragraph for me?
Don't think she heard you, Avery.
Oh, so Laylam.
Okay.
Would you mind reading the first paragraph for me?
Okay. Dead pixel or artifacts. Thus, two problems are definitely monitor related. Dead pixels are spots on the screen that never fire or light up. You can check for this by setting the background to white and seeing if any spots does not light up. With artificial node, no matter what you have on your screen, you can still see the outlines of a different image. That image has been burned into the monitor, sometimes simply referred to as burning, and it's not going away. In other case, the only solution is to replace the monitor.
Perfect, thank you. So with burn-in, sometimes you can get lucky and you can kind of reset the burn by doing a different image for long enough over the spot that's kind of been burned in, but it's probably not worth the time in the corporate setting. You might as well just replace the monitor itself. Dead pixels aren't a huge deal, and you know, if you can fix it, cool. If you can't, that's typically okay for the basic office worker. But our Kelly and my old coworker Marvin, when he worked in radiology, they couldn't have any dead pixels on the screen because that could severely, affect the reading of whatever MRI that they were looking at. And so if there was a dead pixel, they would have to replace the monitor like immediately. So it just kind of depends on who's using the monitor and if they're okay with missing a pixel or two. All right, incorrect colors. This too is most likely a monitor issue, but you should confirm it by switching monitors. So colors, make sure that it's not on colorblind mode or that you haven't messed with the coloring settings, but you can also test that by connecting it, like switching monitors to see if it's hardware or your desktop issue or if it's a monitor issue itself. dim or flickering images. In LCD monitors, these issues are most commonly caused by backlight starting to fail. So in those cases, you're going to replace the backlight. So if it's your monitor is getting dim or it's flickering, that's the first thing you should check. If it is a laptop, it could be that you just need to put the charger on, because your monitor will dim itself sometimes when it's not plugged in, and also when it gets to a certain point in its battery life. Right? And distorted images. Vincent, will you read this paragraph?
Distorted images. This used to be more of a problem on CRT monitors if they were near a motor or other device that produced a magnetic field. Sometimes the image would be wavy, and other times it might look like it was getting stretched to one side of the screen. If your office is a cubicle form, desk fans can be a major culprit. If you can eliminate the possibility of any sort of external interference, and you have confirmed that is the monitor, and not the video card, then replace the monitor.
Perfect. And this isn't something that you'll typically deal with in real life. I would be surprised if you saw CRT monitors still being used in your work life. But just know that they can be affected by motors or magnetic fields. Oof. Distorted geometry. Hunter, take this one.
Older square CRT monitors had a 4:3 aspect ratio, and newer widescreen HD displays are either 16 by 19 or 16 by 10. The point is, if you set your resolution so that it doesn't match the monitor's geometry, you may get distorted geometry problems. When this happens, the screen will look stretched or squeezed, depending on how you see it. Just choose a different resolution and the problem should go away.
This one is simple. If it looks weird, change your resolution. And 9 times out of 10, that'll fix your problem. And yeah, change your resolution. Oversized images and icons. Cynthia, can you take this one?
Oversized images and icons are related to screen resolution. They usually mean your resolution is set too low for the monitor or projector you're using. Increase the resolution and the issue should disappear.
Perfect. So once again, if things look funny on your screen, change your resolution. That could be weird distortions or just oversized or smaller. Other graphic issues. Tewodros, will you take this one?
Other graphic issues can be attributed to the memory installed on the video card. This is a storage location of the screens of information in a queue to be displayed by the monitor. Problems with the memory modules on the video card have a direct correlation to how well it works.
Perfect, thank you. So at that point, you would need to replace the graphics card.
Resolution issues happen pretty regularly, Julian, but usually it's somebody who's been inside messing around with the settings, and that's usually what causes those resolution issues for the most part.
Yeah. If you're an IT guy for a school and you go into the library, 9 times out of 10, it's a kid like me that went in and thought it'd be funny to change the resolution.
Kids never do stuff. I don't even know where you get this stuff.
I broke so many computers. I didn't break them. I distorted the images.
I think the meanest one I did was I went and I changed every color to black. So the background, everything was black. So you literally had to memorize the keystrokes to get to the settings to be able to change the colors that I had set everything. to set everything to the same color: text, background, icons, everything.
So don't do that. I hope Kelly has to fix that problem one day.
I did. I was told I had to fix it.
I'm a believer that if you have caused a problem that's annoying like that, you should be the one to have to fix a problem as annoying as that one. Eye for an eye, as they say. All right, so we have 2 questions. I'll give you guys just a minute to answer those. And I'm gonna go let my dog back in. Kelly, give me some small talk while we wait on them.
The other fun one is like if you know somebody who has a whole bunch of icons on their screen, could take a whole bunch of screenshots and save all the icons to their background and stuff like that. And in order to encourage them to clean up their backgrounds, you can take a screenshot of that, and then you set the screenshot as the background, and then you take all the icons and put them in a folder. So now the icons are no longer there, and they're clicking on the background thinking they're clicking on the icons.
It's pretty mean, but also well-deserved. So I can't say I'm mad about it.
My first office job, it was like a constant thing where if you left your computer unlocked, it was your fault. So there was constant pranks being played on everybody. If you failed to lock your computer and walked away from it, something was going to be bad when you got back.
So this being said, be nice to your IT guys.
This was operations.
I know. Be nice to your IT guys, because they're the ones that know how to fix it.
Yeah, and girls too.
Hey, yeah, IT girls too. Karen, how many tabs do you have open in your browser? I just had a feeling, Kelly. I just had a feeling.
Hey, that just woke me up for real. Man, too many. I'm guilty. It's like you looking over. It's like you looking over my shoulder, man. Get out of my house. Get out of my face.
Something just told me. I don't know. I just think of Marvin.
Oh man,
This is something Marvin
classic.
would say.
He was classic.
Oh.
It's me now going to click on all of them, closing them up right now too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was that was a funny day. Getting Marvin to get rid of him.
That was a good day. I'm proud of it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and let's talk this through. A user is complaining that his screen has a lot of after images on his monitor. What type of issue is this user reporting? This is also known as ghosting. So this burn-in can also be referred to as ghosting. It looks like a little ghost image behind, or that's being left behind. So it could be called ghosting, a burned in image. just burned in, but not low refresh, not dead, or the drivers. All right. A client complains that their laptop screen is not working when connected to an external monitor. He is able to still work on the external monitor. The IT notices the laptop's main screen only works when disconnected from the VGA cable from the monitor, and the monitor shows no signal once disconnected from the cable. What can be a fast solution based on the information we have? Change your projection settings. So your projection settings, that's your display settings. Typically, laptops will have a function key where when you press it, it'll change from mirroring to extended displays, or only show on one, and it'll just kind of cycle through as you press that function key. So changing your projection settings, that's the same thing as your display settings. Most likely not an issue with the driver. The monitor's working, so not to change the monitor, and the cable's working, so you shouldn't need to change the cable. So if it's only working on one or the other and both are working, it's most likely display setting. All right, printers. Whew, if only Mark was here. So different types of printers work in different ways. So you would expect that laser printers might have different issues from impact printers, because problems are often dependent upon the type of printer that you're using. We'll break down this discussion by printer type. This session right here is probably what I struggled with the most when it came to hardware. So I recommend taking good notes of this following section on how to troubleshoot printers. And so to prevent you from taking good notes, Hunter, will you read this slide?
Do you want me to start at the top, or do you want me to start with the low print quality?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
start at the top.
Impact printers are so named because they rely on making a physical impact in order to print. These are typically dot matrix or daisy wheel printers. The impact printer's print head will be activated and forced up against the ink ribbon, making a character or pattern on the paper. Impact printers are relatively simple devices, therefore only a few problems usually arise. Do you want me to keep going, or is I paid my dues? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Low print quality. Problems with print quality are easy to identify. When the printed page comes out of the printer, the characters may be too light or have dots missing from them. Printout jams inside the printer. A common obstruction is a piece of the the perforated sides of tractor feed paper that has torn off and gotten crumpled up and then lodged in the paper path. It may be necessary to remove the platen roller and feed mechanism to get to the obstruction. Strip drive gears or wrong paper, such as paper that is too thick, can also cause the paper to jam. Stepper motor problems. A damaged stepper motor is easy to detect. Damage to the stepper motor will will cause it to lose precision and move farther with each step.
Perfect, thank you. So impact printers, pretty easy. You're either going to have low print quality, a printer jam, or you're going to have the stepper motor issue. You'll know it's an impact printer based off of the keywords that they give you in your questions. If you see something like tractor feed paper, you know that is impact printer. Low printer quality is going to occur throughout all types of printers, but the printing type will be pretty clear based off of the question. Impact printers are a lot different than your inkjet or your laser printers. Kelly, did you want to add something?
I was to say, like other thing, with the impact, just remember multi-part forms. And if you hear something mention a ribbon, an ink ribbon, if there's any kind of ribbon involved, ink ribbon, impact printer.
Yep. All right. Hunter, will you read this one too? I'm just kidding. All right. So I recommend you take a screenshot of this slide so that way you can go back and look at the different characteristics, what's typically going to be the cause of the problem, the characteristic, and then the solution that could be implemented. So consistently faded or light characters, worn out printer ribbon. Solution, you're going to replace the ribbon. Karen, will you read the second one?
Okay. The second one under characteristics.
Yes.
Okay. Print lines that go from dark to light as the print head moves across the page causes, causes printer ribbon advanced gear slipping. Solution, replace the ribbon advanced gear or mechanism.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Tiztao, read the third line. You're muted, sir.
All right. Small blank line running through line of a print consistently causes printed pane stacks inside the printhead. Solution, replace the printhead.
Perfect, thank you. Rachel, our third one, or I guess our fourth one.
Small blank line running through a line of print intermittently cause a broken, loose, or shorting print head cable. Solution, secure or replace the print head cable.
Awesome, thank you. Lorraine, will you do the next one?
Printer making a printing noise, but no print appears on the page. Cause, one missing or improperly installed ribbon cartridge. Solution, replace the ribbon cartridge correctly.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, DW, will you read the purple one above that?
So this one, okay. Making a printing.
The one above that.
Oh, sorry. A small dark line running through a line of print. Okay, then it says that the cause would be a print head pin stuck in the out position. And the solution is replace the pin head by pushing the pin in, or pushing the pin in may damage the print head.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and let's see, Aster, will you read our yellow and final one?
Printer printing garbage, such as garbled characters. The cause is cable partially unhooked, wrong driver selected, or had printer control board PCB. The solution is hook up the cable correctly, select.
You cut out at the end, but I'll take the last one.
Somebody was calling me. I'm sorry.
You're fine. So last, hook up the cable correctly, select the correct driver, or replace the PCB respectively. So in general, if you see garbage or garbled characters, it's going to be a driver issue, especially as far as the A+ is concerned. If you see garbled or garbage characters, think drivers. All right, and then we have one more quiz that I'm gonna give it to Kelly. I think actually I'm gonna give it to Kelly now. It's yours, Kelly.
Hand it off during the quiz. All right. For some reason, Avery didn't want to wrap up the printer part, but you know, we'll continue. Talk about inkjet printers. So inkjets do have many of the same parts as impact printers and such. And in that sense, they're similar technologies unless you get closer to the print heads. So all the way up until the carriage, most of it is pretty much the same. But within the inkjet, you have 4 basic categories where the preponderance of your errors will come from. First, print head ink cartridge. That is all essentially surrounding the actual cartridge itself. You have the print head cartridge, the belt, and the stepper motor. There's the paper feed mechanism, and control interface and power circuitry. Oof. Print quality. So here, Maftuna, can you please read about print quality for us?
Yes. Print quality. The majority of inkjet printer problems are quality problems. 99% of these can be traced to a faulty ink cartridge. An example of a quality problem is when you have 10 blank lines present in every line of text on the page. This is caused by plugged hole in at least one of the small pinhole ink nozzles in the print cartridge. Another common problem is faded printing. Replacing the ink cartridge generally solves this issue.
Excellent, thank you. So most of it comes down to try swapping out the cartridge and see if that fixes the problem. I know the cartridges can be expensive, so possibly running it through a cleaning cycle or something like that before you go ahead and replace the print cartridge would be beneficial and potential cost savings. But for the most part, if the problem is with the print head or the cartridge itself, you replace the cartridge, it clears it up because you're essentially replacing that whole piece. Color output problems. Leela, can you please read that one for us?
Color output problems. First, ink could be bleeding from adjacent areas of the picture, causing the color to be off. A leaking cartridge can cause this, as can using the wrong type of paper for your printer. Our second potential problem, the ink cartridges are installed in the wrong spot. This is for the printers with multiple color ink cartridges. That should be easy to check. Obviously, if that's the problem, put the color cartridges where they are supposed to be. Third, if the ink that comes out of the cartridge doesn't match the label on the cartridge, try the self-cleaning utility. If that doesn't help, replace the cartridge. Finally, if one of the colors doesn't come out at all and self-cleaning doesn't help, just replace the cartridge.
Thank you very much. As we're starting to see with inkjet printers, the vast majority of the troubleshooting steps come down to cleaning the printer head, calibrating the printer, or replacing the cartridge, right? For the most part, when it comes down to the ink itself. It's a shady business there, Hunter. Big ink. That's why everybody's going toner, man. All right, paper jams. For the most part, inkjets have pretty simple paper paths. It usually is a pretty straight through mechanism. So paper jams due to debris and obstructions and things like that tend to be a little bit less likely, unless you have small children with Legos and they throw those into those open holes or something like that. That's always a fun one. But for the most part, you're not necessarily looking for obstructions, but it is possible just to, you know, to a quick glance look just to make sure. But for the most part, they tend to revolve around one of two issues. One is a worn pickup roller where it's grabbing more than one page, pulling it through, or it's the wrong type of paper. Like you've put in a thicker weight than it's used to handling, you know, or you've been operating with a thicker weight paper or heavier weight paper, and then you go to a lighter weight paper, and then it's grabbing more because it's used to a thicker feed. So first, make sure you're using the correct paper, and then possibly maintenance kit will give you another pickup roller to use. Next, other paper feeding problems. Regardless of the feed style, printer will have a paper feed mechanism which picks up the paper and feeds the paper into the paper feed mechanism of the rollers, which has small rubber rollers that roll up against the paper and feed it in. They press up against small rubber cork patches known as separator pads. These help to keep the rest of the paper in the tray so that only one sheet gets picked up at a time. If these start to wear out, it's going to start grabbing more than one because you're not going to have the correct amount of pressure. Stepper motor problems. Just like impact printers, failing stepper motor will have the same results: unevenly spaced lines. Extremely common in dot matrix printers. It's what led to the Philbin printer repair method. When I was in college, we had a failed stepper motor on my paper after a 36-hour marathon writing a paper and an hour's worth of failed attempts to print it. I decided it was better to attempt to repurpose my printer as a drone, and I gave it a good send-off out my dorm window. Unfortunately, it failed on its first flight, but I still stick to that method that you could potentially repurpose a printer if you truly want to. I'm all about recycling.
Yes, your wife was there.
So, laser printer problems. So the processes that lasers use to print, called the electrophotographic imaging process, or EP imaging process, is the most complex of all of them, as we went over these steps earlier. So you should already have memorized the 7 steps while we went over it this morning. So I'll give you a little bit of a pass until tomorrow. But here is a quick breakdown of all 7 steps on a singular page. If you want to take a screenshot of this and just save it, it just kind of lays it out for you again one more time. Since I know we went over it this morning, we wanted to review it again. What are our 2 mnemonics? Does anybody remember the G-rated version? Oh man, it's terrible.
Please come every day to feel complete.
Okay, there we go. We got one. We got one. All right. All right. What's our other one? Try to keep it clean. Anyone?
Printers can't even do the effing cleaning.
There we go. All right. So we got both of them. So processing, charging, exposing, developing, transferring, fusing, and cleaning. So good one to take a picture of. I'll give you about another 30 seconds. It also walks you through each of the individual steps again, just to kind of remind you what's going on. Kind of sums it up nicely. Again, this was one of those ones that I wrote on the boards at the back of the class until I knew I got it in the correct order and what was happening in each stage. So I did my ports, I did my RAID arrays, I did my 802.11 standards, and I did my laser printing steps for sure.
Hold on, Kelly. Run that list one more time for me, please. We got ports, RAID arrays.
It's things that I would write down every day until I would memorize it.
Yeah. What were the last two you said?
So ports.
I've actually been making a list every time you mention it. I have a list. I just can't find it, but I want to make sure I got them.
Sure. Ports, RAID arrays, my wireless standards, which is the 802.11s, and then 7 steps to laser printing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Those are my 1001 lists that I kept writing down until I got them right.
Oh, sorry, but you guys, just in case anybody
There you go.
needed the info.
Nice. All right. So laser printing, that's, you know, they are the most complex of the printers. Thankfully, most of the problems that we come across with laser printers are relatively easy identifiable and have very specific fixes. Power problems, you turn it on, it doesn't respond normally. Could be a problem. Is it plugged in? After that, if you so choose, you can take a multimeter and find the following voltages in the power interface, J210. Of course, at this point, we're likely going to be calling a printer technician and saying, hey, come fix your stuff. But we could check, you know, pin 1, 5, and 9 to look for various voltages, +5, -5, +24. I did not receive a printing question this specific on the A+, so just throwing that out there. Avery, did you? While you're being ravaged by a wild beast in your house?
No, I did not. Stop.
All right. No connectivity, IP issues. Essentially, it could have an improperly configured IP address. If it has a static IP, IT puts it in manually, then people are human. They make mistakes. They could have flipped a 1. You know, they could have done something. And so the IP could be improperly configured for what it is supposed to be on. So make sure to go in and double check it versus what the IP is supposed to be based off of the network you have it on. All right. Here we go. Nothing prints at all. Are you the only one affected by this issue? Or is the person calling you the only one who is not able to print? Or is everyone not able to print? It's amazing how great this is as a troubleshooting tool. When people ask questions like, I don't have internet. Okay, is it just you or is it the office? You know, are there more than one person affected? Is half the office affected? You know, knowing how many people are affected by the exact same issue can lead you to the correct answers with regards to what the problem is. So Things you should check: is it plugged in? Is it powered on? Is it online? All this can be checked from the main screen on the printer. You can also ping the printer from its IP address just to make sure it's responding. But with anything, as with anything with regards to networking and stuff, check your connections first. Make sure, because unfortunately, it is such a common thing that cables get bumped, cables get frayed, they get stepped on, they get crushed, they get damaged, and they're easily replaceable. So rather than assume the entire device is bad, it's much easier to replace and check a simple cable first. Paper jams. This is Karen's absolute favorite. She loves paper jams, especially on laser printers. They're fantastic. So laser printers today, they essentially run at copier speed. So they run really fast. Most common problem you have with them, unfortunately, is the paper jam themselves. And they can get jammed in a printer for several reasons. First, feed jams. And that's when the rollers themselves are starting to get worn and they're picking up more than one page at a time. Similar to the feed jams in inkjets, same thing. Solution to this is essentially replace the worn rollers or replace worn or broken drive gears in the printer itself. And again, thankfully, most laser printers today are sophisticated enough. They'll tell you exactly where in the printer the jam is. And they'll basically say printer behind, door 3. And you open up door 3, there's the jam right there. You can extract the jam and then try to continue from there. If you're continuing to jam, there's probably some debris in there, or you're having feed problems. Blank pages. So 3 main things: blank pages, toner cartridge. You're likely out of toner. That's going to be your most common. The other would be a damaged transfer corona assembly. If it's missing or broken, it's not going to give the paper the proper charge to be able to, draw the toner off the roller onto the page, right? Because we're using static electricity to transfer it from the toner cartridge to the roller and then from the roller to the page, right? So if we can't provide a charge to the paper, we're not going to get it to transfer. And even if you've put a new toner cartridge in there, go back and check it, because sometimes they forget to take that little strip off the top of it that allows the toner to feed in. That's another common one that people tend to forget. So always double check that one. Pull it out, look at the cartridge, make sure it doesn't still have that little strip on the end of it, and then put it back. All right, and then your high voltage power supply, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. It shortens, the abbreviation for it is HVPS. It gives very high voltage, low current power to both the charging and transfer corona assemblies. In laser printers, if it is broken, neither corona will work properly. And if it has a self-test mechanism, and if that shows an image on the drum, but not on the paper, and the transfer corona assembly is present and not damaged, then the HVPS is itself at fault and needs to be replaced. That is a field replaceable unit, hopefully not one that you'll be doing yourself, but a actual printer tech will be taking care of for you. All right. All black pages happens when the charging unit, charging corona, the wire or the charging corona in the toner cartridge malfunctions and fails to place a charge on the drum. And because the drum itself is grounded and it has no charge, anything with a charge, like the toner itself, will stick to it. As the drum rotates, all the toner is transferred to the page, and a black page is formed and cooked in through the fusing process. So solution for this one, replace the toner cartridge. If that does fix it, then you're good. All right. Repetitive small marks or defects could be caused by spilled toner inside the printer itself or damaged defective toner cartridge. All right. Vertical black lines on the page. So we talked about vertical white lines being a damaged drum or debris on the drum or on the transfer corona, or on the, excuse me, the primary corona. Vertical black lines on the page. This could be the fault of a damaged drum itself or a dirty charging corona wire. The drum is typically a part of the toner cartridge itself, so replace the cartridge is your best bet. And typically, if you have a faulty cartridge, the manufacturer will replace it. Unless it's like 99% empty, and then they'll be like, nah, I'm not going to give it to you this time. But if it's a relatively new one and it's a faulty cartridge, they typically will swap it out. All right, image smudging. Talked about this one earlier today. When the page, you know, like you touch it and it just like the image smears or smudges, it's not quite, you know, set yet. It basically comes down to your fuser is not reaching the proper temperature to bake that resin into the page. So either the fuser is failing or potentially you're using a different type of paper and the fuser, you know, settings need to be changed. When you adjust your paper weight in the settings to let it know what kind of paper you're using, and it knows it's using a heavier weight, it'll adjust the fuser temp for you. So, all right, ghosting. So what you have when you fade images of previously printed pages on the current page, and this is caused by a broken cleaning blade or bad erasure lamps. Sometimes if you're running the printer like nonstop, you might want to let it cool down for a little bit and then try it again, and it might clear this issue up as well. Printer prints pages of garbage, AKA garbled text, which tells us bad drivers. It's always the answer. Garbled text or prints garbage, bad drivers. All right, pause it for a second. Using a network is to connect to other resources, obviously. So when networks don't work like they're supposed to, users tend to get a little bit upset. And here's some common issues you might run across while you're working with them. First is no connectivity at all. And the most common issue that prevents network connectivity in a wired network is a bad or unplugged patch cable, either between the computer and the wall, or sometimes in the actual server closet. Because sometimes people go in there because like things aren't working right, so they'll mess around with some stuff. It happens far more often than we would like, because so often in the security portion of this, they talk about securing the server rooms, locking everything up, making sure everything is secure. Everywhere I've ever worked, the server room has been wide open. You can walk in and do whatever you need to do it. So make sure everything is plugged in. Next, cleaning crews, they got a lot of work to do. So when they come in, they're getting everything done, they're moving things around, they're cleaning, they're vacuuming, dusting, they bump things. It happens. When you have if you have your tower underneath your desk, which for some reason a lot of places do that, and you're moving your feet around throughout the day, sliding in and out from under there, you bump cables with your feet. It happens. Check your connections. That is predominantly where your problems are going to be. Most places don't have them to where you can roll over them or step on them. Unfortunately, this is not all places. So like sometimes they'll run it in the back underneath your desk, And over time, you're kind of stepping on them, you're kicking them, you're doing all that stuff, and they can fray these cables. So sometimes replacing the cable will fix that particular problem. So if it gets snagged or damaged in some way, it needs to be replaced. And then if you're an IT person that's replacing it, do some cable management. Tighten, you can use some zip ties, tighten things up to where they're up and out of the way. They won't be kicked, snagged, bumped, prodded, stepped on, what have you. So just because you walked into the situation, it looked ugly, doesn't mean you need to leave it looking ugly. So you can clean things up while you're there and prevent yourself having problems in the future. So now, when you're troubleshooting connectivity, always start with the rudimentary things first, cables, all that kind of fun stuff before we start moving on to other things. Check and see, are the lights actually working on the NIC for the computer? Turn around and look at it, see if they're blinking, making sure we have some kind of connectivity. If you have your loop plug handy from your toolbox, go ahead and plug it in there and check that real quick. Next, shutting down the machine. Rebooting it might help reestablish a connection. Still, if we have no connectivity, in this case, if you don't have any lights, you don't have a connection, that should tell you that. You've replaced the cable, that doesn't work. Then we ask that simple question, is it only your computer or is it all computers that are having problems? If everyone else in the same area is having the same problem, then the point is at a central issue. It is not individually in each computer. So most wireless cards have an active light on them as well that will kind of tell you whether or not they're working. So if this is it, you would open up Device Manager to see if the NIC is having any issues, and you may need to update the drivers. Doesn't happen often, but double check this. After we've gone through all the physical checks, we've made sure that physically the pieces are supposed to be good. Now it's time to start checking and working on configurations. So you open up your command prompt, and we're going to type in our ipconfig /all to give us all of our network settings. And this is our initial step to starting to, troubleshoot and work through these problems. So once we have put in that the ipconfig /all, it should give us all of our network settings. The key things we are looking for is our IP address, our subnet mask, and our default gateway. Those are the three most important things that we can receive from that list. All right, let's see here. Stephen, can you read for me a little bit, please? Just that first paragraph.
Yeah. No connectivity. Common refrain from users when they are having network issue is, I can't get to anything. As a technician, you need to phrase that statement to understand what they really can or can't get to, and if it's isolated to their device or occurs on other devices as well. It's best to ask questions to determine which resources are unavailable to them. The two main categories of unavailable resources are local resources and the internet.
Okay, so that should raise a pretty big flag in your mind. So if they're able to access only local stuff and not the internet, what would be the first thing we would check? There is something specific that we would look for . Well, you're giving me what's wrong, Avery, but what I'm saying is like there's something that would tell us what the problem is. That would tell us back in our TCP/IP technical session. Yeah, gonna override. There we go. The question, Julian, is if the client tells us that they're able to access local resources like printers, they're able to communicate with things like that, and see other computers in their office, but they're not able to access the internet, what would be the next step in troubleshooting just to verify that? So where would we go? What would we look for? Yes, Cynthia.
I don't know what a Dhcp is at all, so I'm lost.
No, he was starting one and then he started another. So he actually added to the confusion with that particular one, which good on you, Avery.
You're welcome. Here, we'll start again.
Oh, the APIPA?
The APIPA. What does that look like? Where do we find it? Very good, Maftuna. Where do we find it? And what does it look like? I see a whole lot of people like looking off camera, like, please don't call on me. So, yes, Rachel.
Well, when you do the IP config /all, it should give you, so you can see the address is 169.254.
There you go. The APIPA is our address, and that tells us that our computer was unable to receive an IP address, so it essentially gave us one to help us with troubleshooting. Excellent. Thank you very much, Rachel. So, they're able to see like share drives, printers, email, stuff like that, but they're not able to go to Google, any exterior resources that they would typically use. But it allows us to troubleshoot. So, but this also tells us that we know the network card is not the issue itself. Wired and wireless connectivity is fine. So we're beyond that at that point. Something is preventing between the connection and the outside world. So next, we're going to talk about some other command line utilities to use. So IP config gives us all of our network connections so that we can start the troubleshooting process. Now, the ping command, P-I-N-G. It is extremely useful, simple tool. What it does is it sends a series of what are called ICMP packets, or Internet Control Message Protocol packets, to another system, in which in turn they will send back a response to you. So it is basically letting you know that you actually have communication with that printer. So if or with whatever device you're trying to reach out to. So remember we talked about pinging the printer if we had its IP address, just to make sure there was connectivity. So if I typed in the command ping space, and then I put in the IP address for that printer, it would send these 4 little packets over to the printer, and then the printer would instantly respond, send it back to me. And if it responds appropriately, I know I actually have a connection with that printer. We're talking. So, and you can ping pretty much anything. You can ping yourself. Remember when we talked about the loopback address, which is what? 127. So if I typed in ping 127.0.0.1, I just pinged my NIC. I pinged home. So that is a software way, instead of having, if I didn't have a loopback plug handy, I could ping myself and verify that my NIC is functioning. And then, so I know my NIC's working, I would go to the very next layer. So I would, since we did the IP config /all, I know what my gateway is, which is my router on the edge of my network, right? So now I can ping my router to see if my router is actually responding. So I'm starting out as close to me as I can, and I'm pinging further and further out to see where that connection problem is occurring. Once I get beyond the router, I'm beyond stuff that is within my control. So if I'm pinging, if I try to ping www.google.com and I get nothing back, but then I go, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to ping 8.8.8.8, which is their DNS server for Google, and that comes back. That's going to tell me something completely different than if neither of those come back. So if I get it off the IP address but not the web address, can anybody tell me what protocol might be the problem for that? Hunter.
I'm sorry. We just so I know I understood. Will you repeat that one more time?
So if I'm sending out a ping and I ping a web address,
and the web address doesn't work, but the
web address does not work, but I ping the IP address for that same website, and that does.
The DNS issue.
Okay. All right. What does DNS do?
It basically breaks down the it translates like from like the address to something like we can understand, like from name to what is it called, like the IP or something. It's like I'm trying to remember what it stands for. Domain name service.
Yeah, it's domain name service.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it the phone book?
Kind of.
Okay.
So what it's doing is it's resolving. Well, I don't want to say it. Rachel.
It's resolving the IP address into a name, or there's a problem with that. Does that have to do with the host file or the zone?
Well, the host, well, it could be the zone file. There's a host file that you can actually override the DNS on your physical computer, but that's another conversation. So, but it's great for pranks too, just so you know. But if the DNS, like if it's not talking to the DNS server properly, it can't take that web address and find out what IP address goes with it. An easy way to think of a DNS server is it's kind of like your cell phone, the contacts list in your cell phone. So when you call somebody in your phone, you're saying, hey, call mom. You're not saying, hey, call, 212-555-0312. So your phone actually kind of operates like a DNS server for you, where you're just saying call mom, where it doesn't understand what mom is, but it knows that it associates mom with these sets of numbers. Does that make sense? So kind of like a phone book. So if your DNS server goes down, you actually can, if it's your personal one, you can establish that you utilize another DNS, because usually you'll have like a couple that you can choose from. So if one goes down, you can select another. Or if you want, you can use Google's. They're the most famous one in the world. That's the 8.8.8.8. Most famous DNS server in the world. Just because it's so easy to remember. All right. So along with the IP config in its basic terms will basically just tell you your IP address, your gateway, and your subnet mask. It's very simple. Well, the command we told you would be /all, which shows full configuration information off of all NICs that are on your computer, because you actually have multiples on there. You have typically you have a wired and a wireless NIC. Sometimes you may have more than one, but it will give you full configuration information to all of, the NICs attached to your computer. It'll give you MAC addresses for each of your NICs. It will give you, much more detailed information. Now, say you're in an office and you have intermittent communication or intermittent connectivity to the internet. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can't seem to figure it out. Well, usually what has happened in a case like that is there's somebody else who has essentially put in an IP address statically, because that was their address they had before, and they just kept it. Well, the DHCP server, when it was reassigning leases, doesn't know that. So it reassigns that address, giving it to you. So now you have two people on the same network with the same IP. Only one of them can talk at a time, period. So then you start to see intermittent connectivity issues because of this. It can be very difficult to try to track down who that culprit is, who has that static IP. So a way to kind of get around it in order to isolate it is we would go in and we would release that IP back to the DHCP server, like we're giving up that lease. And in order to do that, we would type in the ipconfig command, but then we would add that qualifier on it, /release. That gives up the lease back to the DHCP saying, we don't need this anymore. We don't want it anymore. We're done with it. If it's an IP version 6 address, you have to put a 6 on the end of it. Now, once we've done that, we have to request a new IP address from the DHCP server. So we would go to the next command, which would be ipconfig /renew, which is basically me sending a request to the DHCP saying, hey, I need a new lease. Can you please provide me with one? And at that point, it will provide you with new information. And that should clear up that problem. But just remember the order: release, then renew, not the other way around. Because if you do it the other way around, you're still not going to have any connectivity. These are all modifications of the ipconfig command. If you're on a Mac, it is ifconfig. F is in Frank, rather than P. So for Mac, a lot of this stays the same, except it is ifconfig in the terminal. All right. Next, last one that you'll need to know with regards to the ipconfig category will be the ipconfig /flush DNS. If you're having issues with your DNS server, you can either assign a new one or you can do a flush DNS. And what this does is it kind of erases the cache or cache, depending on how you pronounce it, the cache for the DNS server, and so that it can be reloaded when it's making a request. So like if I request, Google off of the IP, the next time I request it, I'm going to be going from a cache file, not necessarily from the DNS, because it's just faster to operate that way. So if I'm starting to have problems, I flush the DNS. It's going to take a little bit longer to load the first few times because it has to re-request that data and, reload it for me. So the main ones you want to remember for ipconfig are your /all, your /release to get rid of your IP addresses and settings, renew to request those settings from the DHCP. And then if you're having problems resolving websites, like you can communicate with the IP, but not the address itself, flush the DNS to re-request that data anew. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints? Dear goodness, please tell me there is a test out lab that goes over all of this stuff. You're welcome. Yes, Stephen.
So we should release first and then flush?
No, two different things. So you should release first, then renew. So you've given up your IP, and then you're requesting a new IP address. That's the release and the renew. Flush DNS would be like if I could ping, if I go back to my ping commands and I ping www.google.com and I get nothing, no response. But I ping 8.8.8.8 and I do get a response. That means I have a connection, but it's not resolving that website to that IP address. Then I would flush my DNS so that I would re-request that information and renew the cache essentially so that I can try to resolve that issue, like resolve those names together the next time. So these are network troubleshooting commands. Yes, Cynthia.
So is the flush DNS like literally like wiping out your cache, like log from your computer, from your actual?
Or your DNS files, not everything.
Right.
Just for the DNS. Yeah, for the DNS, yes, it is wiping out because you know every time you go to a website, you're not requesting all that information anew. It's partially kept in cache so that you can get there faster. This wipes it out because something has caused an interruption or a problem in between you and that server. Flushing it just kind of lets you start from scratch and typically can resolve that problem.
Wow, okay, cool. I just want to make sure that the actual flush means literally like you're wiping it out. Wow, cool, thank you.
Yeah, allows you to wipe your cache for your DNS memory. Questions? All right. Traceroute command. It's kind of a Windows-based command line that enables you to verify the route to a remote host. It's kind of an interesting one to do. So you can pick a website or something like that. You can run the traceroute command. So do like, you know, traceroute space www.google.com. And what it will do is it will tell you every single router that your packet passes through on its way to Google and how long it took to get there. So kind of a cool thing to do. It's not nearly that many, believe. Yes, Cynthia.
So it's all the hops basically from
yes.
point A to point B. So like if my packets, like if I want to try again the TCP IP stuff, like the actual packets from, let's say, my computer, and I want to get to Google, it goes through my router, my home router, right? And then
that's first hop.
Right, that's the first hop, and then it's gonna try to find the best possible route in order to get to the Google server out in the web. So it's literally showing you literally all its steps.
Yes,
it's a beautiful thing.
And this is also kind of where TTL or time to live kind of comes into play.
Right, exactly.
Because each one of these hops, when we have time to live, would subtract your time to live by 1. And when you get to 0, the packet is dropped. So this is what they mean by time to live, is every single router it has to pass through, you know, each hop it has to make, it diminishes that time to live by 1, because we don't want packets just flying around out there forever. We want it to give an honest attempt. If it can't reach its destination, based off of that honest attempt, it drops the packet and requests it be resent.
But that also has to do with like the checksum, like the acknowledgement and sequence order, or this, I should say, the sequence order of that packet And acknowledging, right. Okay.
And it is acknowledging to you every single step of the way that it is made, how long it took to get there, gives you the IP address, you know, usually of each one of these routers. And I mean, it kind of gives you some basic information and just kind of lets you know. It's interesting to kind of see how things get routed through the internet. Sometimes they'll give you fixed locations or physical locations. Like this one here said Jacksonville Comcast.net. Like the one Professor Messer did this one, and he ran it. And as soon as he pinged his local router, I laughed because I knew exactly which one that was, because I didn't realize he actually was from the same town I was. You know, he was actually in Tallahassee, because I recognized the router and the city and street location that he mentioned. And that was actually from my hometown. He was like quite literally like 5 miles from where I was. So it's kind of neat that way when you trace stuff. And that's basically what this is. Just kind of make sure the packets are getting to where they need to go and the path they take to get there. Yes, DW.
So clearly I'm doing this as you're speaking, and I'm getting a couple lines with star, star, star. That means that that request for that specific hop timed out?
No, what it may mean is people can use some of this stuff for nefarious purposes, like getting IP addresses for specific routers and stuff like that. So what they may have is tell that router to not respond with detailed information. So the star, star, star may be, you know, you went through this router, but they're not going to provide you with details.
Because I'm seeing, I did zoom.com, and I'm getting like 5 routers with star, 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 and then it says request timed out.
Interesting. Try Google, just simply.
I did Google. Google came back in 9 hops.
Okay. Some of them, it could be like, it depends on the level of security they're operating with, or if they block ICMP packets, which a lot of places do because they can be used for attacks. So if they block ICMP packets, that's where you're going to get the star, star, stars. So great question though. So here's the one right here. You can see it on Mark 7 where it's timed out, but it continued past it. It's just not allowing me to get information from that one router. Because that router right here, you can see it right here. Is this what you're talking about? It looks similar to this. Star, 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 request timed out.
Yeah, that's exactly what
it means that specific router is blocking ICMP packets for security reasons, so it's not going to give you details.
Okay, but it still counts as a stop.
Yeah, it still counts as a stop because it's moving through there. It'll pass them through. It just won't respond to them. Yes, Cynthia.
Have you been able to, if you're a really good hacker, to actually look at that detailed 7 and really lock it in and see exactly where that's coming from, or if it's a firewall, or if it's in the DMZ zone or something like that?
I mean, I imagine you could, but it just depends on what level of effort you're going to want to put towards that. I mean, if that is your specified target, yeah. I mean, but if it's just a random router, you're probably not going to put a lot of effort towards it. So, you know, kind of depends.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Traceroute, that marks your path. It lets you follow a packet through the internet and see all the stops it makes along the way. And then we know time to live is basically each router that it passes through, it decreases our time to live. We set a time to live on here, like say for 8. So for each one of these, it would go down 1. Once we hit 8 stops, it would stop sending any packets, and then it would request a resend because it couldn't reach its destination in 8 stops. We can intentionally set a time to live. It's beyond the scope of this course to a little bit, but knowing what time to live is part of the course, but adjusting it is beyond the course. So Traceroute traces the packets. NetStat. This is used to check out the inbound and outbound TCP/IP connections on your machine going on right now. So you can quite literally go through each of these, each connection, anything that is connected to the internet, be it Zoom, Google, Firefox, whatever applications you may have set up, every single one of these will have its own TCP/IP connection, and it will allow you to see what is hooked up, what's talking, and what's active essentially. It also can be used to view packet statistics, such as, exactly how many packets have been sent and received, and potentially the number of errors. Now, this can be used if you have odd programs that should not be connecting to the, to the internet or talking. This can kind of help you find them. If you see something on there you do not recognize, look it up. See what it is. What is it associated with? So NetStat lets you know all active network connections. Yes, Cynthia.
So like you can use this information and put it in Wireshark and then go into more specific details in that specific packet. Yes. Right. Like, I mean,
well, if you were capturing this stuff over Wireshark, you could dive into each individual packet if you wish, depending on how much you record, because you actually record the packets and then you can go back and analyze the packets.
Yeah, I've done that. It's just a very deep. I mean, it's a pretty impressive program. Like, to me, it should. I don't know if there's a certification. I haven't gone that far to see if there's like a certification to use Wireshark, but
no, but it is basically almost a must for security. Like, and it's one of those, it's free.
Yeah.
It's worth getting it and just playing around with it.
I just haven't gotten into like real deep stuff yet, but it's pretty fascinating and it's really detailed, which I like a lot.
Absolutely. Yes, Julian, it would also display UDP. So it's all TCP/IP connections. So it would have all your TCP connections and all your UDP connections, and it would distinguish between the two for you. And it will even tell you what port is being hit. So you see this 10.0.0.64, that is the local address, that's your address. And then you have this colon, and then this number after the colon is the port number that is being utilized by that protocol. So we're seeing the 51,026, these ports being used. Those are the ephemeral ports. That typically means whatever communication is coming out of those ports was initiated by us. So, but it'll let you know, like if you have a web server port open, if you have an FTP port open, all that stuff, it will tell you all of that. NetStat lets you know every open network connection you have going on at the moment. All right. MBT stat. It's a command that shows net BIOS over TCP information. It's not used very often, nowhere near as much as the others in this category. But if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to diagnose a problem with net BIOS name resolution, then you would use this. So in BT, just associate that with net BIOS. From a definitional standpoint, that should be sufficient for the exam because, again, it is a command that you would rarely use. In fact, I don't think in the wild I have ever used it. Have you, Avery? Other than testing it, essentially?
Yeah.
I mean, outside from the clinical test of it, never actually used it.
No.
So. All right. Now we have some net commands, depending on the version of Windows. It can be a very powerful command at your disposal. Now, net allows you to do almost anything that you want with the operating system. Here are some basic commands. Do you need to memorize all of these? No. It's just kind of good to kind of have them around, maybe to refer back to them. So I would recommend just kind of taking a screenshot of that, having it around. But will they get into these with, you know, with regards to A+? Not so much. Is it good to play around with them? Yes. Are there more commands we're going to be learning as we move along? Yes. This is just kind of our introduction to the command line. We will get heavier into the command line in 10.02, but for 10.01, these ones that we went over are sufficient. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, revelations, headaches, overwhelmed, underwhelmed, whelmed. All right. With that, we have one last command to talk about. That is NS lookup. This command enables you to verify entries on a DNS server. So to start it, you essentially use it to make multiple requests without typing NSLOOK several times. So you kind of enter it and then you exit out of it later. So you would type the NSLOOKUP command, press enter, you enter into NSLOOKUP, and then you can look up specific addresses from there. So NSLOOKUP used to verify entries within the DNS. Last chance for questions, comments. All right.